He said, "Not me. They're talking about JD."
Oh, he did say that. Bro, Trump is so awesome. He just can't stand not being popular. He can't stand.
Welcome back to State of the Union. You just heard from the GOP vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance. Here with me now to respond is former presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg, a Navy veteran. Thank you so much for being here.
It's true. What the f*** Kamala doing not doing interviews? I agree. I think she should. I think she's a bit worried.
Much for doing this.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Senator.
Thank you.
Within a week of you being named on the VP ticket, the Democratic nominee changed. And you guys seem to be struggling a little bit with how to approach the new dynamic. How are you approaching your new opponent and the new ticket?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty straightforward, actually. We're running against a set of policies that I think have failed the American people, and we're running to a set of policies.
Notice he changed the topic on the trans stuff. They're aware it's not popular. It's also a major flub that they ran with the transphobia when it wasn't even a trans person. It would be unacceptable to run with this narrative if she was a trans person, but there would be significantly less people on board with it because unfortunately it is a very salient point for the American population that trans people are tricksters and weird and cheating and ruining the integrity of sports or whatever. But in this circumstance, it's not a trans person at all. So they're going off the heels. I mean, they're just getting extra nutty on the timeline. And I think that it is, no, this is the full interview, chat, don't worry. And that is the reason why he tried to dodge that question.
Policies President Trump's 4 years in office that I think really succeeded for the American people. And I think that what's different about it, and you're right, Dana, it is different, but what's different about it is that we're running against a different person who a lot of Americans just don't know. And so I think we have to remind people that President Trump delivered lower prices, lower inflation, a prosperous and peaceful world, and also a secure border. And Kamala Harris's policies have produced the exact opposite. Now, that was an easier case to make when Joe Biden was in there because people associate Joe Biden with the policies. But I think Kamala Harris clearly owns the policies of the Biden-Harris administration, especially when we consider the fact that, as we've all learned over the last few months, Joe Biden clearly isn't capable of doing the job. And so I think that drives home that Kamala Harris really has been the one calling the shots. I mean, how could she not? I think Joe Biden doesn't really know where he is.
Kamala Harris has been calling the shots. As who?
Well, I think she has to have been, right? Because if she's not calling the shots, Dana, then who is? And I do think it drives home something that's fundamentally dishonest about the way that Vice President Harris and also a lot of senior Democrats have approached this. If you remember, for months, even years, the argument was that Joe Biden was sharp, he could clearly do the job. And the minute that he performed poorly in that debate and he became political dead weight, you have Kamala Harris and everybody else trying to throw him overboard. But I think the more troubling question is, why did so many senior Democrats, including the vice president, cover for him? And if Joe Biden wasn't capable of doing the job, as even a lot of Democrats say now, was Kamala Harris in charge or was somebody else in charge? And that's a real issue.
There's no evidence that Kamala Harris threw him overboard. But I want to move on to something that Governor Walz has called you and Donald Trump, and that is weird.
Sure.
And it is taken off. The New York Times reports that when Donald Trump was asked about it, he said, "Not me. They're talking about JD."
Oh, he did say that. Bro, Trump is so awesome. He just can't stand not being popular. He can't stand being perceived as unintelligent. But more importantly than that, he can't stand not being perceived as popular. He can definitely stand being perceived as violent and aggressive and all of these things that invoke power. But the moment that you call him a weirdo, he crumbles, dude. He's like, nah, they were talking about JD Vance, actually. Not me. They were saying that about JD.
Well, certainly they've levied that charge against me more than anybody else, but I think that it drives home how they're trying to...
You're such a cuck. This is precisely why he was selected to be VP. Because he is such a gross little worm, dude. Oh, he just took it. Bro, he just ate that. He just ate that, dude. Oh my God. JD Vance is... I know exactly what photo this is. Yep. This is JD, baby. Oh, embarrassing. To be fair, there's not really much he could do to fix that, to salvage that, because it's so obvious. I mean, he literally said Trump can't be because he called wife Usha beautiful. He He said that in the interview that we just watched. Dude, he literally said, and by the way, my wife is out of their league, referring to talks about their partners like that. Yeah, it is. I mean, I guess he's like trying to defend it. I don't know how you just allow yourself to be embarrassed over and over again in front of the entire nation. I can tell you, it's when you're a careerist douchebag with no discernible position beyond having proximity to power. JD Vance was already a carpetbagger. He rose to prominence by literally selling out the Appalachian people. Okay? His own people. He called his mother a crackhead in his book and said she was gross. He said the mountain people have a unique way of just being resentful and angry. Part of that was dire economic prospects that were presented to them. But also the other reason was because they just did not have any sort of real attitude towards picking themselves up by their bootstraps. They're all uniquely fent-addicted monsters. He did that. He's gross, dude. He's a gross piece of and liberals loved it. Liberals were like, oh my God, please tell me more about how these mountain people are just like monsters who are all fent-addicted losers. Please tell us more about that. Oh, sanctioned one who knows how to whisper to the white working class. True, if it doesn't pay off, he just disappears into obscurity, though. Lamal's such a funny prospect after all that. Yeah.
Distract from their own policy failures. I mean, look, this is fundamentally schoolyard bully stuff. They can accuse me of whatever they want to accuse me of. As Harry S. Truman once said, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. And I'm doing this because I think that me being vice president will help improve people's lives. So I accept their attacks, but I think that it is a little bit of projection, Dana. If you think about just take a couple of days ago. Tim Walz gives this big speech. He's been announced as the VP nominee. And I remember when I had just been announced as the VP nominee, I gave my big speech and I saw my wife and I gave her a big hug and a kiss because I love my wife and I think that's what a normal person does. Tim Walz gave his wife a nice, firm Midwestern handshake and then tried to sort of awkwardly correct for it. So I think that what it is...
Dude, that's not going to work. Bro, nope, you can't do that. You know what this is like? I'm going to tell you, hold on. Number one, he's still getting his talking points from Twitter. And worst of all, not just Twitter, but Donald Trump Jr. I saw this and I actually responded to it earlier today while we were streaming. I kind of let that slide in there. Totally normal to greet your wife with a firm handshake and bro hug / backslap. Tim Walz isn't weird at all, guys. So that was something that Donald Trump Jr. thought was a good line of attack, to which I responded in the way possible. I said, I wouldn't be posting like this knowing full well that the governor of California made your current wife feel things you'll never be able to make her feel. Okay. Obviously, that was maybe a little too big. Okay. I know. But also, a lot of this is about how people read people on camera. Okay. You cannot, no matter how hard you try, make a narrative like that stick with a guy like Tim Walz, because he doesn't read like that. He reads like a regular ass Midwestern dad. He reads too normal in comparison to the rest of the DC bureaucrats. Okay. And I'm not just saying that because I personally like him or like his background. I'm just also looking at the polls. He was a relatively lesser known governor who was very popular in his state. He was pretty popular in his state. But beyond that, in every state that he has appeared so far, he's leading in the approval ratings by multiple digits at this point in comparison to even Kamala Harris. He's got a plus 11 boost on Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris has a plus 2. So obviously people are responding to it positively as well. My normie friends who despise Joe Biden are genuinely elated with Walz. Okay. And the thing is, you can't look at that and be like, that's weird. That's the weird thing, actually. This guy who hugged his wife after delivering his speech, shook her hand and then hugged her after his speech. That's the real weird thing, not us. When Trump is the presidential candidate for your party, Trump is notoriously odd when it comes to his relationship with his trophy wife. It just doesn't make any sense. So you can't do that. It doesn't work. It will always fall. It will always fall on deaf ears. Okay. That's number one. Number two, I think this is similar to when someone like Sneeko will try to be like, Hasan, you're so soy, right? You're so soy. You're so gay. You're such a beta male, shit like that. where it's like, bro, look at yourself and then look at me. Do you think the average person who isn't primed into believing like weird right-wing narratives is going to look at a person like me that is completely uninitiated, is going to look at a person like me and look at a person like you and be like, between these two, Hasan is the soy one, like he's the beta one, he's the soy cuck beta, like that's crazy. You can't, at the end of the day, we have primal lizard brains, okay? And we respond to shapes and colors on screen. So that is why, what? You don't blame the entire world economy on a single woman while she's still vice president? Be real, feminist baby boy? Huh? You okay? I'm confused. Yeah, dude, they're coping about numbers like this. Michigan net favorables, Walz plus 14, Harris plus 2, Vance minus 6, Trump minus 10. Dude, I'm saying it, but without those glasses, you look like a big body nerd. I feel like with glasses, I look more nerdy. What do you mean? Anyway, point is, Vance minus 11. I told you, anyone that is like close enough to Ohio, which also despises Vance, is gonna hate Vance. Walz plus 11, Harris plus 2. I told you. You can't try to. You can only try to lean into what people are thinking and maybe exacerbate that attitude. You can't just like genuinely rework the way people respond to certain things that they feel, certain things that they watch, certain things that they see. This is a legitimate problem within the Republican Party, where they personally think that like Hollywood liberal media is the reason why people have these attitudes, right? That they think like people are, I don't know, pro-gay because of liberal media, and the response to that is making like right-wing media that will then brainwash people into having right-wing opinions and like being in all this and they don't realize that like, no man, Hollywood does that because there's like a lot of gay people in Hollywood and they don't have that kind of attitude. It's like an organic thing that they feel, and most people over the course of many years, especially when like legislation changes as well, their attitudes reflect reflect that reality that they experience on the ground. Like marketing doesn't work in that direction. You can get people to move a little bit in your direction if they're already primed to feel a certain way, but you can't like seriously rework the attitudes that people have. Okay? Kai Siant live. Who wants a gifted at everyone? Oh my God. Kai Siant is in the chat. The real Kai. The culture that you experience is broadly reflective of the material conditions, the underlying material conditions. Okay? It's like a mirror held up to the real experience that people have. You can only move in the margins if there is already like a genuine lack of interest in a particular issue, like Israel, for example, for many years, genuine lack of knowledge, or if people already have these kinds of hostilities and resentments that you can maybe beef up those opinions. Like, for example, white supremacy is a foundational principle for America, right? It is an attitude that is broadly reflected in society. It is an attitude that is maintained through our institutions, right? It's all around us at any given moment. That's precisely the reason why Birth of a Nation was so goddamn successful in revitalizing the Klan, right? It would not work. You could not be able to like teach people to not be just through culture alone. Institutions need to work in that direction. People need to work in that direction. There needs to be genuine broad opposition to things like that. You feel me? Yeah, Hogwatch Copium. We're going to get to that after we finish the JD Vance thing.
Two people, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who aren't comfortable.
Who wants a gifted? What's up, Verge? We got to do a stream together. Oh my God, it's the real Kai. He wants to do a stream with me. Oh my God. I love thinking that this guy legitimately thinks that I think he's actually Kai Cenat. Oh my God, guys, I think we're going to make it. Chat, is this real? Is this the real Kai? Is this the real Kai Cenat? Are we going to get a Kai Cenat collab, dude? I think I might hit it big time. We got to do a stream together. Fuck, bro. That's so sick. That's so sick, dude.
Yes.
Oh my God, it is him. Oh my God.
I already have my ticket to the game. Are you in front? You a photographer?
Oh my God, it's actually him. Oh my God, how is he writing in the chat while also, wow, he's so sick. It's crazy that he's writing in the chat while also simultaneously walking around the streets of Paris. Kai Siant, dude. That one must be a fake stream. Chat, I'm being sarcastic. Oh my God, I forget that there's people who take this shit seriously. No, it's a random person rebroadcasting an older Kai Siant stream. Yeah. It's not morning in Paris right now. Jesus Christ. This is the reason why I have to always talk about the top of the hour ad break coming to you at the top of the hour. Okay? This is why. Because people just forget. People don't understand it. And it's not fake. Unless you subscribe for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime by connecting your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account. Here's the 3-minute ad break now. What's your McDonald's order? I don't eat at McDonald's. BDS. I mean, to be fair, I didn't really eat at McDonald's before BDS either. JD Vance did drag at Yale. I know. We already covered it earlier.
On their own skin because they aren't comfortable with their policy positions for the American people. And so they're name calling instead of actually.
Bro, you drink Coke? Coke is not BDS. McDonald's is. Shut the f up. It's not a part of the official BDS list. McDonald's is not even a part of the official boycott part of the BDS list, but it is a organic boycott target. I don't want to have this conversation with people over and over again. Oh my God, your stream sucks. L stream. No, why did you say that? Is Adderall BDS? I don't know, but I don't know why that would be a consideration. I don't think it is. I just got word that Zyn or BDS, I would die. Yeah. Anyway, there's a reason why boycotts are supposed to be targeted. I don't think that I don't think that the actual boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement would be like, hey, medication like insulin, for example, is now on the boycott list. So if you're diabetic, who gives a I don't think it works like that, man.
Actually telling the American people how they're going to make their lives better. I think that's weird, Dana, but look, they can call me whatever they want to.
You're saying Tim Walz doesn't have affection for his wife? I don't even understand that.
I said that he acted weird, which he did, on a national stage in front of his wife and in front of millions of Americans who presumably were watching at home. And I think that it's projection, Dana. Look, I think this election should be about who's going to solve the inflation crisis, who's going to make groceries and housing more affordable, who's going to secure that southern border. Kamala Harris's record is that she supported all the policies that made that problem worse, Dana. We're trying to say we're going to take the country in a different direction. I really think that it's important to point this out, Dana. Their entire campaign has not been about, here's our policy for how we're going to make your life better, or here's what's wrong with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's policies. We're going to name call and hope that you don't know.
Oh, no, he your man. He big mad, chat. He mad as right now. Oh, they're just name calling us. No, that's the whole point of weird, dumbass. It's weird that you guys are hyper focusing on random nonsensical that you're lasered in on that ain't nobody gives a about instead of policies that actually help people. That's the whole point of the weird campaign. That's it. That's it. That's the whole point. So you can't reframe that now. You can't run away from that. Just be weird, bro. I mean, you are. You literally can't stop yourself. You just said, "Oh, I'm not weird." Tim Walz, he's not. He gave his wife a handshake. That's weird. Queso Hasan stream when? Oh yeah, what did Queso say about me calling him out for hiding the truth about him not actually being a real big boy? Like he's fake husky. He's actually a skinny man, straight up. Like low key. This is a real. Queso say you're skinny and a fraud. There's nothing funnier than the Republican Party. There's nothing funnier. There's nothing funnier than the Republican Party name calling us. It's really fucked up. The Queso situation is problematic. Yeah. Okay. I'll look at this later. I got to finish this JD Vance thing. It's actually kind of fire. It's better than I thought it was going to be. One, Dana Fash is actually eating his ass alive. And two, he is just not doing well in this interview at all.
Notice that we don't have an agenda. That is the entire Democrat approach to this election.
They have done both. They have both policies, and they are trying to define you as well.
If you go to Kamala Harris's campaign page right now, they still don't have a policy.
Well, let's talk about policy
positions
versus
about what they're going to do. I think that's really insulting to Americans.
You started out talking about the policies in this interview, but you have been on the campaign trail.
Yeah, she said you started talking about the policies in this interview. and then resorted to saying that I'm not weird. Tim Walz is weird. Look at the way he shook his wife's hand, bro. I said this earlier, and I saw another chatter actually repeat it in the chat as well. One thing that they haven't done yet, I brought this up before, which I think will inevitably happen, is talk about how like I keep saying JD Vance. Tim Walz's sperm is weak, and that's why they had to do IVF. It's coming. It's coming. They're gonna be like, oh, dude, fucking this loser, he has weak sperm.
Questioning Tim Walz's military record. You say it was shameful that Governor Walz retired from the military before his unit deployed to Iraq. I want to read you something that Joe Eustace, who is a veteran, he served with Governor Walz, said. He said that's a lie. He said he was as good a soldier as you'll find. I'm not trying to defend him. I hope people don't think that. What I'm trying to do is defend someone who served his country. I'm not voting for him. I'll campaign against him. But I don't think it's fair to characterize his service the way they have. Governor Walz served 24 years.
Sure.
He even stayed after he could have retired because of 9/11, more than the country asked of him. Do you honor his service?
Well, of course, Dana, I honor his service, and I've never criticized what Tim Walz did when he was in the military. I criticized his retirement decision, and most importantly, Dana, I criticized his lying about his own record, okay? This is a guy who is captured on video saying, I carried a gun. Criticizing Tim Walz's service, I'm criticizing the fact that he lied about his service for political gain, Dana. Now, I served in the United States Marine Corps, and you know this. And look, there are a lot of things that I'm proud about. I've never lied about what I did or overstated it because it would be beneficial to me in an election. I think that's what Tim Walz did.
Bros, this guy is like Republican Buttigieg, yes. And even Buttigieg has like a little bit more charisma than he does. Buttigieg has like more, I can't believe I'm saying this. Buttigieg has more swag than JD does. Straight up. They both got that dog in them though, like the ambition. It's poison. And you can tell when a dude is like such a careerist that is just so desperate for a crumb of power.
That's what I was criticizing. And yes, I do think it's scandalous behavior.
Like the only difference between him and Buttigieg is that JD Vance is gay, you know?
Talked about one of the things that he said, weapons of war. He was talking in a campaign stop about, he was trying to talk about gun control.
Sure.
And he said, weapons of I carried. And I will say that the Harris-Walz campaign did say that the governor misspoke there.
Sure.
Do you accept that?
He misspoke. Another word is that he lied about it, and he didn't correct the record for 15 years until he was put under political pressure because I called it out, Dana. Whatever you want to call it, a misspeaking or a lie, I think Tim Walz should have to correct the record. Now, you pointed out a soldier who defended his service. There have been a number of soldiers who served with Tim Walz who have criticized him on the exact same grounds that I have because it's not right to misstate or to embellish what you've done, and I think that's what he did.
And on the question of when he left the National Guard, he filed his election paperwork February 10th, 2005, that it was possible that they would deploy to Iraq, and it ended up being 2 months. He retired 2 months.
Can we be honest for a minute here and recognize that Walz, I already ran the 3-minute ad break, that Walz did mislead the public about being deployed in an active zone? I don't think he did that. But I already ran the 3-minute ad break chatter. I think you're confusing him with JD Vance, who said he saw no combat, was in a combat zone. Check his speakers. Wait, what? Oh, check his speeches. Oh, I thought you were saying. He said he wielded weapons, of which he did. National Guard trains with the same weapons as he does others. Yeah, no, it's like a weird thing that people are hyper focusing on. He said he took weapons into war during his speech, and he said he misspoke. That's it. That's what it is. No, he is serious. That chatter is serious. Dude, so much. I love you guys, man. Hey, liberals, just know I got love for you, okay? Some of you are quite literally the easiest of dupe. It's just like Republicans can play you like a fiddle. I'm willing to bet that many of you also have like probably got whipped up in a panic with the trans girls like participating in high school swim meets when it was happening. There is this mindset amongst liberals that are always like, well, we got to see both sides of a situation. We got to see what the Republicans have to say. When the Republicans are like saying the most unhinged, right? They always love falling for it. They always love looking into like the veracity of the claims made when it's like something that you normally would never consider. You know what I mean? Something that you should never really consider. It's just very, very silly. But Republicans are really good at priming liberals into caring about like completely nonsensical like that. They're so good at it. And there are always people who do that. There are always going to be liberals who are so like interested in this this fake notion that their side has something like that the other side must have something serious going on, that they always want to predictably fall into this trap. Some of them even get mad when I'm like, who gives a f about this trans? There are plenty of liberals who got mad at me in the way that I always dealt with the trans panic stuff, where I was like, you don't care, I don't care. We're only having this conversation because you're a weirdo who has trans on the mind all the time. And there were literally there were liberals in this community that were like, dude, that's not the adequate way to deal with it. You actually have to bring, resources and show that like, no, actually trans women do not outcompete cis women on a regular basis, blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, dude, this is a silly thing that they brought to the forefront of the conversation. Sometimes you can have that conversation. Other times you don't have to have that conversation. This is one of those instances where you don't have to have that conversation. That's why Tim Walz is doing such a great job of just being like, why do you care? You're weird. Let's get back to feeding the children. And also is reframing all of these narratives so perfectly.
2 months before they actually got the paperwork.
But on CNN last night, Dana, one of the people who was actually in charge of him said they knew they were going to deploy to Iraq in February of 2004, fall of 2004. So he knew he was going to Iraq. He decided to quit, to retire, whatever word you want to use.
Retire.
Because he wanted to run for Congress. He lied about that. He said that when he decided to retire, he did not know that he was going to Iraq. That is another untruth, as even his senior military officer said. So again, I'm not criticizing the service. I'm criticizing the dishonesty. Dishonesty spoken.
Like, this is crazy, bro. Donald Trump literally dodged the draft, #1. Like, which, by the way, I think was good. It's good that he did that. Why the fuck did you die for a campaign? Like, that's insane. Okay, that's #1. #2, everybody, including Donald Trump and JD Vance, run on the Iraq narrative. So why the f you like, oh, I don't understand. This like 50-year-old guy was supposed to go himself in Iraq. It's really up that he didn't. But we also simultaneously believe and say that it was unjustifiable and wrong, and many Americans died for no reason. These two things don't make sense. Like, what are you saying? What are you saying? It doesn't make sense. Fucking 40-year-old guy. Never mind. Sorry.
In favor and for the purpose of political benefit. And I think that the most important thing here, Dana, is it goes to Kamala Harris's judgment. Tim Walz is ultimately going to be the...
Thank you for inventing the talking point that Donald Trump dodged the draft. I could not have actually come up with this on my own. Oh, I see how it is. You just go and read my comment and make it your own. Yeah, you are the first person in the United States of America that brought up bone spurs. Come on, dude.
Vice President Kamala Harris is in great health if she wins for 4 or maybe even 8 years. Why did Kamala Harris choose a person who has lied about their military service? I think that is a serious lapse in judgment, and I don't want to hear from a campaign spokesperson of Kamala Harris. I want to hear Kamala Harris herself address what I just said.
I've seen a lot of statements from veterans, including those you served with, saying it's just untoward to be criticizing somebody who served for 24 years.
Dana, I'm not interested in the ad hominem. I've heard from a lot of veterans groups who criticize Tim Walz. The question is, he said he served and he didn't.
I'm not interested in the ad hominem. Shut up, you loser. He's really going after that Reddit vote, dude.
Is a dishonesty. I couldn't care less what one or the other person says about it. I care about what the truth is. The truth is that Tim Walz didn't tell the truth. And importantly, Dana, this is about Kamala Harris's judgment. And I think that when you ask, why has Kamala Harris allowed the border to be wide open? Why has Kamala Harris supported policies that have promoted the increase in inflation? I think it goes to the heart of her judgment, and I think that that's what we should be talking about.
One last question. Donald Trump didn't serve in the military. He received a medical draft deferment for bone spurs to avoid serving in the Vietnam War, reportedly as a favor to his father. Do you find that shameful, too?
I think that Donald Trump didn't serve in the military, but he didn't lie about it, Dana. I've known Donald Trump for a long time. He really honors our veterans. He honors me for my service. Donald Trump didn't lie about
It's such a, yeah, I can't believe Dana just heard that chatter's talking point. I'm glad that chatter actually chimed in with that earlier.
About serving in the military. He didn't say that he went to Vietnam when he didn't. This is the problem. I don't criticize anybody. Whether they served our country or not, I think it's honorable to serve, but obviously a lot of people have reasons for not serving.
Oh, dude, it's sick, actually. Dude, come on. Do you hear yourself, dude? Do you hear yourself? Like, I think it's awesome that he dodged the draft. I've never said anything but that, okay? But come on, bro. You're literally like, no, my opponent is lying about his career, 24 years in the goddamn National Guard, and like he literally left so he could run for Congress. But also my president, he's totally valid for not for dodging the draft. Come on, bro. Ain't nobody is gonna buy this. You're so stupid.
I criticize somebody for embellishing their record, for lying, saying I went to, Dana, do you think that it's a problem that he said I went to, but he didn't actually? That seems to be a problem to me.
Well, they've corrected that. Let's move on to.
They've corrected it by admitting that he lied.
Let's move on to another.
Dude, like, it's not like Tim Walz was running around being like, yeah, I love, and I went into, I was always in, I've been in all the time. It's like everybody knows he didn't go into what the like, we got him, boys. We got him. He misspoke. Like, we got him. We got him. Okay, you got him, dude. The typical D viewer. It is exactly, oh my God, it is exactly what debate pedophiles do, okay? It is this debate pervertry where it's like, hey, we found a clip where it seems like you're saying something that you have never said before, never said after, and have said the exact opposite the entire time. That's it. We're just going to lock you down now. This is what you've been doing for years. It's like, no, nobody thinks this. This is just what the Taliban do all day in your stream instead of applying for a job. No, bro, they do have jobs. They're in IT. Instead of telling accountants to turn their computer on and off, that's what they're doing on their off time. It's like, that is straight up the exact same thing with like, Hasan thinks Twitch streaming is harder than a 9 to 5. It's like, dude, I have literally never said that. I don't believe that. I've said the exact opposite a million times over. I've spent the last 5 years of my Twitch broadcasting and most of my earnings on trying to organize in people's workplaces and have actually seen a genuine amount of success with community organizers that came out of this community that were successfully able to unionize their workplaces. But then on the other side, you got Keemstar being like, Hasan hates the working class. And it sticks sometimes. It sticks. I don't think it will with Tim Walz.
Important issue to voters, and that is the issue of abortion. You wrote the foreword for a new book by Heritage Foundation President Kevin Roberts of Project 2025. Project 2025, among many other things, calls for rolling back approval of the abortion drug mifepristone. Donald Trump told me during the debate that he would not block the drug. And on Thursday, when he was asked, he didn't rule it out. So which is it?
Well, look, Dana, first of all, Project 2025 is not affiliated with the Trump campaign. Kevin Roberts is a friend of mine, but I wouldn't say that he speaks for the president in the sense.
What did you say? Lebanon sent a barrage of missiles and not a single one was intercepted by Israel? What the f are you talking about? What? I can't tell. Sometimes I feel like Chad is always like baiting me. You know what I mean? Chad's always baiting me with like, Iran is attacking Israel. Iran is attacking Israel. It's true. It just happened. Wait, what the f? Rockets launched from South Lebanon at Israeli targets make impact in Nahariya and Kalabri as the Iron Dome fails to intercept them. Wait, what? It's in the north. That's Hezbollah. It's not Iran. I don't know what's going on. All right, let's continue.
Same way I wouldn't say that he speaks for me. Now, what Donald Trump has said is that he respects the Supreme Court's opinion on the mifepristone ruling.
But let me just stop you right there.
Please.
The Supreme Court, you're a lawyer, so you know this better than I.
Sure.
The Supreme Court, all they did was say that what came to them didn't have standing. So they let it stand. A real question, a substantive question, hasn't made it to the Supreme Court. So my question for you is whether or not a Trump-Vance administration would allow mifepristone to continue to be sent around the country?
Well, President Trump won the nomination of the Republican Party. He said it to you, and he said it repeatedly, that his goal is not to block mifepristone, it's to let states make the decision on abortion policy. Now, of course, that does mean, Dana, we have to be honest about this, that California might have less restrictive rules than Ohio, which might have less restrictive rules than Alabama. I think what President Trump is really trying to do on the abortion question is really admirable, and I wish the press was a little bit more honest about it. He's saying we've had a 50-year culture over abortion where, unfortunately, this issue has just divided the country, and he wants to provide some ground for us to come together, for states to make these decisions, for voters to make these decisions, and for us all to respect one another. That's all he's
on
proposed.
that issue, a few months ago, on the question, his position,
Yeah.
which you've adopted, is it is up to the states. I spoke to a woman named Kate Cox. She lives in Texas.
Sure.
She was 20 weeks pregnant. Her fetus was diagnosed with a disease called, it was a deadly genetic condition called trisomy 18. She said that carrying the pregnancy, she was told this by her doctors, to term, if the fetus even survived, would hurt her chances for having more children, which she and her husband desperately wanted. Why is not allowing her to end that pregnancy helpful?
Scorching, dude. Scorching and torching. This is the type of that makes me really angry with mainstream media, because they showed during the Trump administration that they do have the capacity to make adversarial journalism happen. Okay? That's why it makes me extra mad when Dana Fash comes out and uses that selective power on like anti-genocide protesters. You know what I mean? It's so frustrating. They never do this to insurance and healthcare executives, right? They never do this to like big pharma. They never do this to bankers. They only do this to like select few Republicans on ideological boundaries when they're annoyed with them. And it makes me so mad. You have the power. You can go ultra instinct all day, every day, but you never flock in when it comes to, I don't know, people who hold institutional power that are ruining people's lives on a daily basis. You only do this with the weakest people in society, people that have no representation. Very frustrating.
Or supportive of expanding families like you want it to be?
Well, first of all, Dana, my heart breaks for this woman. I don't know her personally. I've certainly heard the story, and our heart breaks for her. And we want people to have healthy, happy families. And it's extremely unfortunate that sometimes, medicine, the act of God, whatever happens, it just doesn't work out. And what the president has said, I think, very clearly.
To be fair, I think Vance is the representation for weird little freaks, Lamau. No, it's not enough. They blow this up. Okay, I'll just say it like this. I think CNN and all these other outlets actually see Donald Trump as a potential threat to the institutions, or what remains of the institutional stability. Okay? So yeah, they bring out their A game when it comes to like Sean Donald Trump, and JD Vance is an extension of Sean Donald Trump. They obviously love JD Vance when he wasn't Donald Trump's vice president. The problem is, I'm going to get back to his insane response in a second, because holy, that's a really bad response. The problem is, there are so many severe inequalities in this nation, okay? There are so many severe inequalities in this country. It's deeply frustrating to me that they do not address those issues. They do not address those problems, and they only have this smoke. They only have the smoke for like JD Vance. They should carry on this resentment to those in positions of power, instead of like normalizing their positions. It's not simply because like it is a Republican that is advancing the cause. It's the cause itself that is utterly, fundamentally flawed. Did he say failure in medicine when the medicine is there? What? He was essentially just saying, I wish the world wasn't the way it was. No, I'm saying that I wish real journalists who have the capacity to do adversarial journalism would do this in moments that matter. Can you imagine if she had this level of fucking smoke? Can you imagine if she had this kind of smoke for Joe Biden, when Joe Biden is like consistently saying like, Israel, I'm wagging my finger at you, Benjamin, baby, oh, and then like Israel fucking butchers, like slaughters like an entire fucking family of Palestinians, moments later. Like there's an obvious mismatch here that like even the worst journalists could easily fucking make a name for themselves by addressing. You could be like, oh, so you mean to tell me that you don't like Benjamin Netanyahu? You say you're a Zionist. You don't like Benjamin Netanyahu. He's ruining the country. He's ruining Israel. So why the fuck are you sanctioning $3.5 billion in weapons for like the Israeli Donald Trump? Why the fuck are you running up against Donald Trump if you don't have an issue with Israel having its own Donald Trump that is currently doing a genocide? That's one question, because these two opinions are at odds with one another. You can't on the one hand be like, oh man, Israel, oh, Benjamin Netanyahu, he's really fucking bad. While simultaneously fucking turning around and being like, but also that's why we have to give them unlimited funds, okay? They treat people like Bernie like this too. Exactly. They only do this to people that they're considering ideological or partisan opponents. With Bernie, they consider Bernie to be an ideological opponent. So they do this kind of thing to Bernie Sanders as well. And if Bernie Sanders has a much better track record and is harder to fucking pin down as like a negative person, then they just lie. They just straight up lie and smear the person. It's why Jonathan Swan went so viral. He got actual real answers out of Trump by being adequately rhetorically equipped. Yeah. With people like Vance, the line of questioning is just clarifying his policy positions because they make him look crazy to normies. The only similarity is that both people break from what is considered acceptable discourse. Vance in a bad way, Bernie in a good way. Exactly. It's like the question you gotta ask if you're a journalist when you're fucking having a conversation. The question you gotta ask if you're a journalist, you have the opportunity to sit down with Biden is like, you keep saying Israel has a right to defend itself. That's fine. You said that a million times over. You also keep saying that, like, we have to stop the civilian death toll in Gaza. Why haven't you done anything about it? And why have you kept sending weapons that are inevitably being used on civilians? Like, these two, this is not even journalism. This is just like a basic question that every human being that looks into this situation can have. This is a real question that most people would have in this circumstance. Even if you're fucking pro-Israel, you should have this question. Even if you're pro-Israel, continue the genocide, you should at least wonder why Biden has to consistently say, oh, it's really bad that civilians are dying. You know what I mean?
Democrats were discouraged. Republicans were on a roll, and it looked like Donald Trump was well on his way to winning back the White House. Now, a new New York Times Siena poll of the battleground states likely to determine who will win shows that the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz ticket has the momentum, leading Trump-Vance by 4 points among likely voters in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. That's a dramatic change after what the Times is calling the worst 3 weeks of Donald Trump's 2024 campaign. After a rough start as Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance is now leading the Republican effort to define the Harris-Walz ticket and to regain the momentum. I caught up with him this weekend at his home state of Ohio. We started with the state of the race. Thank you for joining us, Senator Vance. So,
Thanks for being here.
I saw Kamala Harris said that she's the underdog in this race. Is that the way you see it? I mean, are you guys still the front runners here?
Look, I think that we are going to have a very tight election, John, and that we just have to sprint to the finish line. We have about 88 days to actually persuade the American people that President Trump should be their president and be their vice president. And I think you just take nothing for granted. You don't believe any polls, whether the ones that are good for you or bad for you. You just try to persuade people as much as you can, and the chips are going to fall where they are.
But Trump seems to think that he's got a huge lead. I mean, you said this at the press conference. You suggested it could be a landslide looking at polls. Do you tell him that you need to kind of like temper expectations?
I think President Trump is extremely confident. Look, I'm extremely confident. I think we're going to win. I also think that we have to work as hard as possible for the remainder of the election to try to persuade Americans to vote for us. That's the name of the game. But yeah, look, do I think President Trump is actually as confident as he pretends to be in public? Yes, he actually is. But we still have to work very hard.
So
That's a weird way to say that.
Talk about racism and whatnot. You faced some really nasty stuff. I saw this thing that Nick Fuentes, of course, he's an avowed white supremacist. He said, "What kind of a man marries somebody named Usha? Clearly, he doesn't value his racial identity, his heritage." I mean, this is racist garbage.
Yes, it is.
But this is also a guy that dined with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago during this campaign.
Well, and that Donald Trump doesn't know anything about and frankly doesn't care for. But yeah, look, my attitude to these people attacking my wife is she's beautiful, she's smart. What kind of man marries Usha? A very smart man and a very lucky man, importantly. And my view is, look, if these guys want to attack me, my views, my policy views, my personality, come after me. But don't attack my wife. She's out of your league.
But, I mean, that dinner that Trump had, and of course it was Kanye West, the guy that's praised Hitler, who arranged it all. that was back a year and a half ago, and Trump still hasn't given a full-throated denouncement of this guy who said that terrible stuff, but he said, I mean, he's a white supremacist.
Look, I think President Trump has issued plenty of condemnations on this. The one thing that I like, the one thing I like about Donald Trump, John, is that he actually will talk to anybody. But just because you talk to somebody doesn't mean you endorse their views. And look, I mean, Donald Trump spent a lot of quality time with my wife. Every time he sees her, he gives her a hug, tells her she's beautiful, and jokes around with her a little bit. I'm not at all worried about Donald Trump. I'm worried sometimes about these ridiculous attacks. But again, this is what you sign up for when you come into politics. I wish people would keep it focused on me, but whatever. They're going to say what they're going to say. My wife's tough enough to handle it, and that's a good thing.
All right, let's focus on something that's gotten a lot of attention. I mean, you know, this cat lady's comment. You talk about Democrat Party dominated by childish cat lady. Put that aside. You also made a policy proposal.
Yes.
Which was why Tucker Carlson had you on for that interview. And you said you advocated giving extra votes to people with children, which seems a little...
Well, John, it's not a policy proposal. It's a thought experiment, right? Democrats said we should give children the right to vote. Some Democrats had said we're going to give children the right to vote. And I said, well, if we're going to give the rights to the children, then we should actually just allow the parents to cast those.
Who has said that? If this doesn't follow up with which Democrat has said children should be able to vote,
votes, right? I trust a parent more with a decision like that than I do, say, a 14-year-old. So it's a thought experiment. There are, though, policy positions behind my view that the country should become more pro-family, right? One thing I learned as a dad is after our second child we brought home, we have 3 little kids, we got these ridiculous surprise medical billings from the hospital because we had chosen an out-of-network provider, of course, at this most stressful of all imaginable moments. I've actually introduced legislation to stop moms and dads from having to go through those surprise medical billings. We want to expand the child tax credit. There's so much that we want to do, John, to make the country more pro-family. And I think it is frankly shameful.
How do you propose whipping votes in your own party to expand child tax credits when the expansion of child tax credits was a pivotal legislative agenda item for the Democratic Party, which did expand child tax credits, but then due to the overwhelming popularity of it, had not made it permanent, thought that there could be legislation to make it permanent. The Republicans actually destroyed that. There is currently a bill on the floor of the Senate to expand child tax credits. Will you give us your assurance to vote for it if it happened to pass tomorrow?
That the Harris administration has lied about what I actually said. Look, sometimes family doesn't work out for people, and that's okay. But I do think that Kamala Harris herself has pursued some family policies, and that is a problem and something we ought to push back against.
So I put aside whatever other people. I mean, I listened to your entire speech. I listened to the whole thing, and you know, I saw, and you did say you weren't talking about people who physically can't have children. I mean, that's not what you were saying.
Well, and sometimes it just doesn't work out, right?
And it didn't work out. You did say that. You called it throat clearing, I think. You said, you know,
Senate Republicans blocked bill to expand child tax credit. Democrats held the vote and made criticism over Senator J.D. Vance's comments about childless cat, seeking to cast the GOP as on the wrong side of helping families and raising children. The vote was 48-44, with the vast majority of GOP senators voting against it. Democrats voted in favor, with the exception of 2 independents who caucus with Democrat Senator Bernie Sanders and Joe Manchin. And just 3 Republicans voted for it: Josh Hawley, Rick Scott, Mark Wayne Mullen. I don't know why Bernie voted against it. Oh no, it's saying he voted for it. Democrats voted in favor with the exception of 2 independents who caucus with Democrats. Wait, the vote on the bill, which would provide most financial help to multi-child households. Senate Republicans blocked a bipartisan bill on Thursday to expand the child tax credit and provide some tax breaks for businesses. Oh my God. They put I didn't realize there was a poison pill in there. I strongly support restoring the expanded child tax credit from the American Rescue Plan that reduced childhood poverty in America by 40%. I cannot in good conscience, however, vote for the tax package that is being voted upon today. At a time when massive wealth and income inequality, we should not be giving tens of billions of dollars of tax breaks to some of the largest, most profitable corporations. This legislation would hand out a $2 billion retroactive tax break each to Lockheed Martin and Raytheon, some of the most profitable defense contractors in the world. God, I hate the Democratic Party. Why? Just put a straight line. Just put a straight line proposal, man. I didn't even realize there was a poison provision in there. Vance stumps his pro-family but skips vote on the child tax break. This also literally offers cover. When Bernie doesn't vote, when Bernie doesn't caucus with the Democrats, it also offers cover for the people like J.D. Vance to not vote for it. You know what I mean? What? Trump 2024? Oh, come on. Lake, you can't be clapping these hogs. Does his research on NBC News. Lamau definitely a bot. Trump 2024, just like fake hijack rallies. Like, that guy is hallucinating. That's awesome. Like, we want that. We want that guy to be in the chat. You know what I'm saying? I want to hear from that guy. I'm excited to hear what kind of new insanities this person is going to put forward.
Look, I'm not talking about that. But you
Well,
did
because
say,
I knew people would try to misrepresent it, so it's
but
important
let's
to
look
be
at what,
clear.
Let's look at what you exactly said. You
Please.
said when you go to the polls in this country as a parent, you should have more power. You should have more of an ability to speak your voice in a democratic republic than the people who don't have kids. I mean, you are directly saying that people with kids should have more of a voice in our democracy. Thought experiment or not about how that is done, but that is the principle. And I mean, I could read on, but you are expressing a principle here.
Again, John, it's a thought experiment. I've been a senator for 2 years. Have I proposed any legislation to that effect? Of course not. Sometimes people make remarks in response to something that somebody else has said. If it was a policy proposal, I would have made the policy proposal in my 2 years in the United States Senate. Now, I do think, John, to be clear here, because I think it's important to focus on what I actually said, I do think becoming a parent affects you in a very profound way. I've seen friends of mine, certainly in my own life, becoming a father does really give you this incredible perspective. You have this little life that you have to take care of. It's an amazing thing, and It does make you think differently about your responsibilities. So yeah, I absolutely do think that being a parent changes you in a profound way. I do not think that we ought to be changing the way that we do votes in this country. I was responding to a Democratic proposal in a very, very thought experiment way.
And you predicted that you would get.
You should ask, who is the Democrat? Who proposed it in the Democratic Party? Just ask that question, man. Do some journalism. Like, this is minor league shit, okay? Who's the Democrat? Can you tell me who the Democrat was that proposed that children should be able to vote? I don't know. Maybe there was one. I don't know. I want to know. It is pretty funny that he's like, oh, I proposed it as a thought experiment.
Get attacked. He said, I'm sure the Atlantic, the Washington Post will come out and say, well, doesn't this mean non-parents don't have as much of a voice as parents? Doesn't it mean that parents get a bigger say in how our democracy functions? Yes, absolutely. So do you regret saying that? You take that back?
Look, John, again, I'm talking about a thought experiment here, and do I regret saying it? I regret.
Oof, he is getting. I mean, this is still pretty bad for him look-wise. It shows that he doesn't have backbone. It feeds into the wishy-washy narratives about JD Vance. Like, I think most people will ask the question, what the thought experiment? Yeah.
Regret that the media and the Kamala Harris campaign has frankly distorted what I said.
How's that distorting what you said?
Because they have turned this into a policy proposal that I never made, John. I said I want us to be more pro-family, and I do want us to be more pro-family. And I do think, look, when you're a parent and you have children, you obviously have a different perspective, and I said that too, and I certainly believe that. But I think that the idea, John, that I actually want to change the American voting system to give 12-year-olds the right to vote and then to give control over it to their parents, it's ridiculous. I never said that. I was responding to a Democratic line.
Okay. I mean, it was a speech on the. Anyway, we'll people. The speech is online. People can
Please,
watch it.
but in the beginning, John, I say Democrats have proposed giving these rights to children. I say if we're going to give them to children, let the parents cast that vote.
So I want to ask you about abortion. There's this proposed amendment that's going to be on the ballot in Florida that basically codifies a constitutional right, state constitutional right, to have an abortion up to about 24 weeks. I assume this is something you oppose.
Well, what I believe, and I'm running to be the vice president of the United States, is that the American people have to make this decision. And President Trump has said explicitly,
the future is now 16 and 17-year-olds win the right to vote in local elections in Vermont town. Wow. Well, I'm glad we got to the bottom of where the Democrats were coming from with this expanding the right to vote to minors. In this Vermont town local elections, bro. What are you talking about? This is ridiculous. This is a little bit more reasonable. Nancy Pelosi saying she backs lowering voting age to 16. Okay, that's from Caleb J. Hull, though. I don't know how valid this is. Wait, where did the article go? Fox News spun it as a Dem project.
Let's have a debate, shall we? Republican presidential.
The so-called Vote 16 campaign recently notched a victory in Vermont. Yeah, this is like local elections in one Vermont town, brother. What the f are you talking about? This is not like a nationwide project. The Vermont policy was in 2024. His speech was in 2021. No, Nancy Pelosi, they're claiming that Nancy Pelosi backed the idea of lowering it. That would be a little bit more reasonable for him to say that. Critics are lowering the voting age often cite the teen brain is not fully developed. Vermont and Missouri are hardly alone in undergoing campaigns. Like, this is for local elections and shit. It's irrelevant. But the Nancy Pelosi one is like a little bit more significant. I myself have always been for lowering the voting age to 16. I think it's really important to capture kids when they're in high school, when they're interested in all this, when they're learning about the government, to be able to vote. Pelosi just advocated for lowering the voting age. Pelosi's comments Thursday echoed those she has made previously, including 2015 New York Times. I mean, this is just like her own thing, but it's a little bit more valid to claim that Democrats are doing. Democrats have suggested to lower the voting age to 16. Still crazy to give that right to the parents. You always agree with Pelosi on everything. It's disgusting. Yeah, she's my goat. She's my queen. She's the bold visionary that we need right now. Okay, I just need to get her to be like a little bit invested in fixing the Gaza situation so that we can finally get some momentum on that front. I have it on good authority that David DePipe was a Mossad agent or something. You know, I'm just going to start lying about that with hopes that Nancy Pelosi pays attention and swiftly and expeditiously moves to push for a weapons embargo. No more arms shipments for Israel. If Nancy wanted to fix Gaza, it would take 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks. I believe in my goat. I believe in my queen. I think it would be far faster than 2 weeks. She would do it. I do also want to point that, like, I personally don't give a shit about 16-year-olds being able to vote, but I do think it would be completely ridiculous to allow their parents to vote on their behalf. Classic. I also am a firm, committed defender of a max voting age. Apparently, the Dana Fash interview was way worse for JD.
They're going to make this decision on a state-by-state level. He won the nomination of our party. He's determined what the platform is. And I think that he's doing something that's actually very, very important, which is to try to help the country find some common ground. Look, California is going to have a less restrictive abortion policy than Ohio, where we're sitting. Ohio is going to have a less restrictive abortion policy than Alabama. I think the people have to make these decisions, and that's the way for us to come together.
Yeah, the democracy narrative on this is so funny when 75% of the country overwhelmingly thought that this was not a good idea to like change the narrative on abortion, change the law on abortion. And also every single state, has actually put ballot initiatives up, and the Republican Party itself has literally tried to nuke these ballot initiatives, specifically in the state of Ohio, because they know that shit is going to motivate people and remind people that at the top of the hour, there's a 3-minute ad break. And people don't want to be reminded of that. They want to just subscribe and never think about that ever again. But at the top of the hour, I still serve you a 3-minute ad break. And those who are unsubscribed at this moment will actually end up seeing the 3-minute ad break. Here it is right now. This is another way that you can figure out that the hours are passing. You should be grateful. I'm basically like Big Ben, throwing bagels at the wall. What a name. Throwing bagels at the wall. Thank you for the 10-tier gifted subs. 10-tier 1 gifted subs, allowing 10 people to no longer see the ads at the top of the hour.
As a country, over a very tough issue.
But this should be, I assume this is an easy one for you.
Javier,
I mean,
thank you for the 5.
Been very clear about how you feel about abortion. I mean, if you've compared it to slavery.
I didn't compare it to slavery, John.
The impact on the society to slavery, yes.
Ask the question.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, I mean, just again, the idea of codifying, whatever the state, codifying a right to abortion up to about 24 weeks. Isn't that something you oppose?
Well, look, in Ohio, we had a referendum in the state, and
you made your position
and I aggressively advocated for the pro-life view because I want to save as many babies as possible. Also, importantly, John, the people of Ohio decided by about a 60-40 margin to reject the pro-life framing, and you have to respect the will of the people. That's all that Donald Trump has said. That's what I believe. And as someone who really does want to say, John, I do want us to become a more pro-family country. I want us to have more babies and more families. I want our neighborhoods to be filled with the laughter of children and thriving families. We and the pro-life community, I think, have to figure out how to better make our case to the American people and how to make it easier to have a baby. It's way too expensive. Housing is through the roof. Medical costs are through the roof. President Trump and I have actually advanced a series of policies that would make it easier for us to have families. I think that's where we're focused on as a presidential ticket. And as the president has said, on abortion policy specifically, the states are going to make up their minds.
And Donald Trump's going to have a chance to vote on that, and he says he's going to offer his position, didn't say what it was. Would you be disappointed if Donald Trump says that he supports a constitutional right to abortion?
I'll let Donald Trump offer his position, and I'll talk about it then.
What would you encourage him to do on that, though? I mean, this is a pretty fundamental idea for you. I mean,
John, what I would
such a
Bro, he's so weird, dude. Oh my God. Like the way he talks, I don't know. Maybe I'm too like bi-coastal elitist minded, but like the way he's just talking about like having children. I'm listening, by the way. I wasn't here, but I'm like still listening to this freak. Like I heard everything he said. Like, oh, we gotta have little babies running around every town. Like he seems obsessed. Like he seems genuinely pathologically obsessed with this idea of like every American must have a child. Like it seems odd, bro. I don't know why he talks about it so much. Like most people think having a child is a wonderful thing, right? Understandably so. It's like a biological thing that we have inside of us. Some people don't want to have kids, and that's perfectly fine too. But like most people dream of a future where they have the white picket fence and they have their children and they're in a loving marriage and whatever. But like his obsessive pathological hyper focus on like, we have to make sure that Americans breed. It just like comes across as a kink more than anything else. It comes across like Elon Musk talking about it. I don't think people think about having a child from this aspect of like improving birth rates. Like no one thinks about it like that. I don't even think white supremacists think about it like that. Like it's a perfectly normal and valid feeling that a lot of people have that they want to have children. I want to have kids one day, you know what I mean? Like it's normal, but the way he talks about it is very odd. It just, I don't know if it's because like he's kind of gross and his vibes are up, or there's just a little bit too much emphasis on the we must improve the birth rates no matter what. Like that it like freaks me out a little bit.
leader in the
What
pro-life movement.
I would encourage him to do is to do what he's done up to this point, which is to try to find some common ground here and try to advance some pro-family policy so that people feel like they have more options, right? A lot of the reason that women choose to terminate a pregnancy is very often they don't feel like they have any other choice. We want to give them more options to choose to have that baby, to make it easier to raise that baby. I think Donald Trump has shown real leadership by focusing on that and not on the culture war topic of what each individual state's abortion policy should be.
You've said that Donald Trump is the greatest president of your lifetime.
He is.
Who, in your mind, is the greatest vice president of your lifetime?
It's a good question. I haven't thought much about that. I think George H.W. Bush did a very good job as vice president. You could pick a number of guys.
Oh my God. Oh God. That's a big mistake. Read my lips, no new taxes. Mr. CIA himself. I mean, Cheney was a demon, so I don't think he'll say Cheney. You really can't say any VPs, honestly, or any Republican Ps. Like a lot of the Republican, beyond Ronald Reagan, you have to go past Ronald Reagan. You can't say Nixon either. Oh my God, I'm just realizing that like so much of the recent Republican presidents and vice presidents, with the exception of like Ronald Reagan, are now thought about in really gross ways overall.
Guys who've done a perfectly fine job, but the president really sets the tone for policy, and I think a lot more about the president than about the vice president. And fundamentally, my role in the administration is to support him in enacting the agenda. That's what I'm going to work on.
Trump was asked recently very directly, would you be ready to be president on day one?
Sure.
When he arrived. And it was notable that he didn't answer the question. Instead, what he said is, the vice presidential candidate doesn't matter. I mean, what did
Ooh, that's gotta hurt, man. He did say that. Big L.
you make when you heard him not answer that directly?
Well, he said that a million times, both in private and in public.
But he's asked really directly,
right.
Are you ready?
Most people, oh, come on, John. He's right. Most people, 99% of the country, they don't vote on who the vice presidential nominee. They're voting for Donald Trump or for Kamala Harris, not for JD or Tim Walz, right? But what I think that he does believe, because he made it the main focus of his vetting process, is, do I think this person can be president on day one if, God forbid, something happens? Yes. So I absolutely am sure that Donald Trump is confident in my abilities. I also think that he's right. That
Ooh. I mean, he deserves it. Like, he deserves getting bitched out like this. He deserves sitting in the cuck seat. I mean, that's That's why he's such a like wormy little, he's such a conniving little backstabbing, carpet bagging worm that like, that's exactly the type of person that Donald Trump wanted. Oh, it's a real Theodore Cruz moment here. Cuck chair.
Politics of this really don't matter that much.
One of the proposals, it's in the platform, you've talked about it, Trump's talked about it, is a mass deportation. Now, I know he said, you'll start with the easy ones, the criminals, people commit crimes, deport them. But he said deporting 15 to 20 million people. How do you actually do that?
Well, John, we have to start with the fact that we have a wide open southern border because our border czar actually set a lot of open border policies. They suspended.
You know, she's not actually, she wasn't the border czar.
Oh, that was what the media called her. She assumed the title. She had control over a lot of our border policy at a time when they were suspending. Let me finish, John. The time they were suspending deportations, they stopped Donald Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, and they reinstituted catch and release. They basically threw open the gates of our country, and now we have a ton of fentanyl, a ton of people suffering.
But how are you going to get 10 to 15 to 20 million people
Well,
out
the
of the
first
country?
thing you have to do is to stop the bleeding, stop the open border, get Kamala Harris out of there, and actually re-implement the Remain in Mexico policy, rebuild or finish Donald Trump's border wall, and you do that and you stop.
It's pretty funny to be like, nobody cares about the VP, and then be like, Kamala Harris was the principal responsible party for the border as the vice president. But like, I think holding their feet to the fire about mass deportations and what that looks like is important. And I think the Republicans do understand that that is going to look like straightforward fascist narratives that will cause Americans to take a second look at the mass deportations proposals and be grossed out by it, which is why he's like, oh, we just got to stop the bleeding.
The bleeding. Now, you're right. Once you do that, once you stop Kamala Harris's open border policies, you've got to do something with the people who are already here. And I think that you take a sequential approach to it. You are going to have to deport some people. If you're not willing to deport a lot of people, you're not willing to have a border when there are 20 million illegal aliens in our country.
10 to 15 million people, this is like, I mean...
Well, John, I think that's the wrong attitude to take of it. Okay, so,
Yeah, it's just like Hitler when talking about the number of Jews that he wants to melt in concentration camps. It's the wrong attitude. It's just 6 million. I mean, when you think about it, it's just 6 million. It's fine. It's like another 6 with the Roma population, another with the disabled and gay people, queer people, trans people. It's like give or take 12 million. It's not a big deal, right? The elderly Slavs. It's an insane thing to say. You are talking about 15 million humans, dude. Like human beings with children, human beings with lives, human beings with homes, human beings with like goals, aspirations. Like you cannot just hand wave that aside.
Knock on doors and ask people for their papers.
Again, but I think there's a wrong.
Bro, I think I got some producers watching me. I'm just saying, dude.
To take of it. Okay,
so there are doors and ask people for their papers.
Again, but I think this is the wrong attitude towards it, right? There's 20 million people here illegally. You start with what's achievable, you do that, and then you go on to what's achievable from there. I think that
let him flail. This is great. That's great. Ask him how you are going to deport 15 million people, bro. How are you going to do that? You're going to knock on doors, ask them for their papers? What is that going to look like? You called us from the start. I'll give you credit on this. Your plan is falling apart, my little dude. Are you talking to me? Or are you talking to JD Vance? He's literally saying, so we want to do a Holocaust, but not like that. Exactly. Call into account how you are going to conduct the new American Holocaust. Make them explain it. Do you think the interview is doing a good job? He's doing an all right job. Equating deportations that you're so dishonest, big guy. You know, like Hitler wanted to originally also potentially deport the Jews too. Like, it's not like they were immediately like, no, we're just going to start doing the murder tomorrow. Like, that's not how this works. You build up to it. You can't really be like, yeah, we want to kill 15 million people. How'd that work out? Yeah. Surely when you take 15 million people with like American citizen children, with jobs, with, car payments that participate in the economy. Oh, the Madagascar. Yeah. Madagascar plan was a plan proposed by Nazi German government to forcibly relocate the Jewish population of Europe to the island of Madagascar. Guys, it's always deportations are notoriously a perfectly valid, perfectly permissible, perfectly peaceful situation. Okay. Who amongst us has not originally had mass deportation programs that they then turned into mass ethnic cleansing campaigns in general? Get a proper source, you cornball. You are the one who just said Madagascar. If you know, you know. It's not like this is like a secret. This is not like a lesser known thing. Like, bro, this is literally like pulling up the page for the Holocaust on Wikipedia and be like, wow. Wow, dude, I can't believe you just pulled up the Wikipedia page for the Holocaust. It's like a fairly well-known thing, you know? The only reason why they haven't canceled HasanAbi is because you're a bot for them. Illegal. I'm delusional. The border never should have been wide open. But again, we got dumb people like you, Trump 2024. Literally, he is horrible at research. Literally, the only reason why they haven't canceled HasanAbi is because you're a bot for them. Who is they? Like, why would I be canceled? What have I done that is cancel worthy? Who is the they that would be canceling me? I don't liberal Twitch. Well, I mean, if you're talking about liberal Twitch has canceled me many times. I've been banned more times than most of your favorite content creators. If you also personally think that, like, I'm a liberal, I don't know what to tell you. Not exactly a big fan of the Democratic Party either. Regularly criticize the Democratic Party for leaning into right-wing bullshit. Are you for Biden? No. I literally said I would never vote for Joe Biden again. Also, Biden is not even running, chatter.
If you deport a lot of violent criminals, and frankly,
at what point does immigration become excessive, if ever? Immigration is a thing that would never actually be a problem for the receiving country if the receiving country was actually utilizing and properly processing all of the migrants that are coming in. There is no lump of labor, okay? There is no like finite amount of labor that people can engage with that all of a sudden we go over the border, like over that boundary and, oh, oops, we have too many people and not enough jobs. The issue here is that there is a two-tier immigration system. There's a two-tier labor system. There is no world where, there's too many migrants, because what does that mean? Migrants coming in mean that there is need for more houses. You have to build more houses now. Who's going to build the houses? Who's going to transport the materials? Those are workers, okay? You need to make better roads in order to connect these towns that you are building. Who's going to make the roads? The people that you are bringing into the country create more economic opportunities for the people that are already in the country, okay? This is the reason why, in the simplest terms, there is no lump of labor. The lump of labor is a fallacy that goes back to like the 18th century when economists were like, there is no such thing. There is no finite amount of there's no finite amount of labor opportunities. So the issue with respect to the immigration structure has always been the lack of processing migrants. Okay, I personally think that, well, it's not even just personally think. I know that America has been dominant and has not run into the same problems that like Japan and many other developed nations are running into as a consequence of the steady flow of migrants coming in, both documented and undocumented. American attitudes towards migration have always been historically much more favorable than their European counterparts. It's a relatively new phenomenon that America has become so right-wing on the issue of migration. Migrants are the backbone of this country. Migrants have built this country. Everyone here in a long enough timeline, with the exception of Native Americans, the indigenous population here are migrants, okay? Some are good, some are bad. But ultimately, the problem with migrants, the problem, in air quotes, with migrants is completely born out of right-wing hysteria. Right-wing hysteria that ties back to white flight and other white supremacist attitudes and values. Also, I'll take it one step further. Every group of migrants that are newly coming into the country, regardless of what country they're coming from, were originally met with a lot of resistance and hostility and were considered to be non-white, okay? And as demographic patterns change and as people become Americanized, which happens by usually around, according to conducted, like full-blown assimilation occurs by the third generation, but it's like damn near identical to the same outcomes, whether on education, whether on like job retention, by the second generation. But they become Americanized, and then they are brought into the white population. Slaves aren't migrants, Hasan. Oh, man. thank you for bringing that up. I definitely was having a what's his face, Ben Carson moment, and I was saying that, like, yes, African slaves that were brought into the country forcibly under chattel slavery were actually migrants. That's what I was saying. Thank you for correcting me. Anyway, as I was saying, there has been a lot of resistance to the Irish when they first came in big waves. A lot of resistance to the Polish. They were not considered white. They were not under the white banner. There was resistance to Jews coming into the country. Okay? Greeks, Italians, and the like. All of which are now comfortably under the banner of whiteness, a part of the in-group. Okay? Chinese as well. Yes. It's like one of the first ever anti-migration bills ever passed was the Chinese Exclusionary Act. So if you go back far enough in time, Benjamin Franklin thought Germans were swarthy, thought Nordics were not real white, that the only real white was Anglo-Saxon Protestants, and maybe some exceptions were made for the French because Benjamin Franklin loved French pussy. That is true. You can look it up. He wrote letters about how he considered Germans to not be real, genuine white. So having said all of this, the last group to be placed under the banner of whiteness has been the Hispanic population. Okay, and their attitudes reflect that. The Hispanic populations reflect that as well. The self-selection of being perceived white, especially for older Hispanic voters, also show that as well. A lot of people in this Twitch community get very mad at me when I say this every single time. It's just, it is what it is. This is what has happened in the last decade. Okay, just making shit up now. You're right. You're right. I'm just making it up. I just totally made it up. Anyway, why would they get mad? A lot of times they're first generation, second generation, and also are very progressive, maybe even proud of not being like pasty, boring, vanilla white if you're in this community. So people get mad. Yeah. The most prominent neo-Nazi in the country is literally Hispanic, Nicolas Fuentes. Anyway. Some Hispanics have been here for generations and have not assimilated. What do you mean? I don't know what that means. Assimilation is not necessarily a bad thing, especially because it's not usually done by force. The only time full-blown cultural integration doesn't occur is when there is genuine outward hostility towards the group of migrants that the country is receiving. That's why you see a lot of people develop more fundamentalist attitudes in diaspora than they would have had at home. Turks in Germany is one example of this. Another example is like some of the Muslim communities, or at least some of the most like popular sentiment that you hear from Muslim communities in the UK. That usually is born out of the genuine hostility that they experience from the receiving nation. So they end up not really integrating. America does not have that issue until recently. America normally doesn't have that issue because America has been, for all of its faults, an infinitely more open-minded nation in terms of immigration in comparison to the European counterparts. Okay? Also, assimilation isn't the same as erasure of unique cultural identity. You can assimilate into a society while still retaining unique cultural identity. That's how you get places like Chinatown, Koreatown, Little Bangladesh, Little Armenia, etc. Yes.
Harder to hire illegal labor, which undercuts the wages of American workers. I think you go a lot of the way to solving the illegal immigration problem. But look, President Trump is absolutely right. You cannot have a border unless you're willing to deport some people. I think it's interesting that people focus on, well, how do you deport 18 million people? Let's start with 1 million. That's where Kamala Harris has failed, and then we can go from there.
And finally, before you go, we commit to this race to kind of sticking to the facts. I mean, I heard Donald Trump give this speech in Montana he just gave, and he said that Tim Walz has signed a letter letting the state kidnap children to change their gender, that allowing pedophiles to claim, you know, I mean, to be exempt from crimes. I mean, this is not true. It's not remotely true.
Well, what President Trump said, and I haven't watched the whole rally.
What he said was not true.
What President Trump said, John, is that Tim Walz has supported taking children from their parents if the parents don't consent to gender reassignment. That is crazy. And by the way, Tim Walz gets on his high horse about mind your own damn business. One way of minding your own damn business, John, is to not try to take my children away from me if I have different moral views than
allowing
you.
the state to kidnap
children
to change their
How would you?
identity.
What I just explained to you, I would describe as kidnapping, John. He has absolutely
crazy.
done this stuff. It's not crazy, John. Come on.
It's not what
you
he's
should
done.
not. You should not be able to take people's children away from them.
And that's
if you
not what he's
If you
proposed.
disagree with decisions about gender reassignment, yes, he has proposed that, John. He absolutely has. Now, here's the more important thing, John. Why are we talking about inflation? Why are we talking about the fact that groceries are unaffordable thanks to Kamala Harris's policies, and so is housing? We've talked a little bit about the border. Why are we talking about the fact that the entire world is on fire because Kamala Harris's foreign policy, she's just asleep at the wheel? We have a set of plans. You talk about sticking to the facts. Donald Trump and I have a set of plans to lower the cost of housing and food, to bring peace back to the world with American leadership. That is all that we want to do, and I think it's telling.
Listen to his words. Donald Trump does this as well. The reason why Republicans act like they are peaceful doves is because the Democratic Party has completely lost the plot on being the party that used to advocate for peace. Okay? They did this in the same exact way as to how they completely capitulated to the right-wing framing on immigration. I saw this in my own lifetime. I saw this with my own 2 eyes. Okay? Post 9/11. Surely, of course, there were Democrats that were always, warmongers themselves. But you have to remember, like, from the Clinton era onward, the Democratic Party has actively switched its narrative, actively switched its attitude towards more war. Republicans, on the other hand, despite the fact that they are obviously warmongers and genuinely bloodthirsty, at least see a benefit in presenting themselves as the ones who will bring about world peace. Very important to understand.
That the Harris administration is focused so much on these side issues instead of on the real substance of why Americans are unhappy with Kamala Harris's
To be
leadership.
clear, I just asked you about something that Donald Trump brought up, not something that the Harris campaign brought up. I was asking you about Donald Trump's
No, I'm
words.
saying
Thank you.
But John, the Harris campaign, what are their policy views? They don't have a policy position on their website. Should she sit down and answer tough questions with you?
Yes,
I think she should.
absolutely.
Where is she?
Well,
but we respect the American people enough.
We hope she'll be on the show soon.
I hope so
Thank
too,
you.
John, because the person who wants to be our president ought to sit down for some tough interviews. I'm willing to do it, and I wish she would too.
All right, J.D. Vance, thank you for your time. Really
Thanks, John.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man.
Our thanks to Senator Vance.
Welcome back to State of the Union. You just heard from the GOP vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance. Here with me now to respond is former presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg, a Navy veteran. Thank you so much for being here.
It's true. What the f*** Kamala doing, not doing interviews? I agree. I think she should. I think she's a bit worried.
Much for doing this.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Senator.
Thank
so
you.
within a week of you being named on the VP ticket, the Democratic nominee changed. And you guys seem to be struggling a little bit with how to approach the new dynamic. How are you approaching your new opponent and the new ticket?
Yeah, well, I think it's pretty straightforward, actually. We're running against a set of policies that I think have failed the American people, and we're running to a set of policies.
Notice he changed the topic on the trans stuff. They're aware it's not popular. It's also a major flub that they ran with the transphobia bullshit when it wasn't even a trans person. It would be unacceptable to run with this narrative if she was a trans person, but there would be significantly less people on board with it because unfortunately it is a very salient point for the American population that trans people are tricksters and weird and cheating and ruining the integrity of sports or whatever. But in this circumstance, it's not a trans person at all. So they're going off the heels. I mean, they're just getting extra nutty on the timeline. And I think that this is the full interview, chat. Don't worry. And that is the reason why he tried to dodge that question.
Policies President Trump's 4 years in office that I think really succeeded for the American people. And I think that what's different about it, and you're right, Dana, it is different, but what's different about it is that we're running against a different person who a lot of Americans just don't know. And so I think we have to remind people that President Trump delivered lower prices, lower inflation, a prosperous and peaceful world, and also a secure border. And Kamala Harris's policies have produced the exact opposite. Now, that was an easier case to make when Joe Biden was in there because people associate Joe Biden with the policies. But I think Kamala Harris clearly owns the policies of the Biden-Harris administration, especially when we consider the fact that, as we've all learned over the last few months, Joe Biden clearly isn't capable of doing the job. And so I think that drives home that Kamala Harris really has been the one calling the shots. I mean, how could she not? I think Joe Biden doesn't really know where he is.
Kamala Harris has been calling the shots. As who?
Well, I think she has to have been, right? Because if she's not calling the shots, Dana, then who is? And I do think it drives home something that's fundamentally dishonest about the way that Vice President Harris and also a lot of senior Democrats have approached this. If you remember, for months, even years, the argument was that Joe Biden was sharp, he could clearly do the job. And the minute that he performed poorly in that debate and he became political dead weight, you have Kamala Harris and everybody else trying to throw him overboard. But I think the more troubling question is, why did so many senior Democrats, including the vice president, cover for him? And if Joe Biden wasn't capable of doing the job, as even a lot of Democrats say now, was Kamala Harris in charge or was somebody else in charge? And that's a real issue.
There's no evidence that Kamala Harris threw him overboard. But I want to move on to something that Governor Walz has called you and Donald Trump, and that is weird.
Sure.
And it is taken off. The New York Times reports that when Donald Trump was asked about it, he said, "Not me, they're talking about JD."
Oh, he did say that. Bro, Trump is so... He just can't stand not being popular. He can't stand being perceived as unintelligent. But more importantly than that, he can't stand not being perceived as popular. Like, he can definitely stand being perceived as like violent and aggressive and all of these things that invoke power. But the moment that you call him a weirdo, he crumbles, dude. He's like, nah, they were talking about JD Vance, actually. Not me. They were saying that about JD.
Well, certainly they've levied that charge against me more than anybody else, but I think that it drives home how they're trying to...
You're such a cuck. This is precisely why he was selected to be VP, because he is such a gross little worm, dude. Oh, he just took it. Bro, he just ate that. He just ate that, dude. Oh my God, JD Vance is... I know exactly what photo this is. Yep. This is JD, baby. Oh, embarrassing. To be fair, there's not really much he could do to fix that, to salvage that, because it's so obvious. I mean, he literally said Trump can't be racist because he called wife Usha beautiful. He said that in the interview that we just watched. Dude, he literally said, and by the way, my wife is out of their league, referring to racists who talks about their partners like that. Yeah, it is. I mean, I guess he's like trying to defend it. I don't know how you just allow yourself to be embarrassed over and over again in front of the entire nation. I can tell you, it's when you're a careerist douchebag with no discernible position beyond having proximity to power. JD Vance was already a carpetbagger. He rose to prominence by literally selling out the Appalachian people. Okay? His own people. He called his mother a crackhead in his book and said she was gross. He said the mountain people have a unique way of just being resentful and angry. Part of that was dire economic prospects that were presented to them. But also the other reason was because they just did not have any sort of real attitude towards picking themselves up by their bootstraps. They're all uniquely fent-addicted monsters. He did that shit. He's gross, dude. He's a gross piece of shit. And liberals loved it. Liberals were like, oh my God, please tell me more about how these mountain people are just like racist monsters who are all fent-addicted losers. Please tell us more about that. Oh, sanctioned one who knows how to whisper to the white working class. True, if it doesn't pay off, he just disappears into obscurity, though. Lamau, such a funny prospect after all that. Yeah.
Distract from their own policy failures. I mean, look, this is fundamentally schoolyard bully stuff. They can accuse me of whatever they want to accuse me of. As Harry S. Truman once said, if you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen. And I'm doing this because I think that me being vice president will help improve people's lives. So I accept their attacks, but I think that it is a little bit of projection, Dana. If you think about Just take a couple of days ago. Tim Walz gives this big speech. He's been announced as the VP nominee. And I remember when I had just been announced as the VP nominee, I gave my big speech and I saw my wife and I gave her a big hug and a kiss because I love my wife and I think that's what a normal person does. Tim Walz gave his wife a nice, firm Midwestern handshake and then tried to sort of awkwardly correct for it. So I think that what it is...
Dude, that's not going to work. Bro, nope, you can't do that. You know what this is like? I'm going to tell you, hold on. Number one, he's still getting his talking points from Twitter. And worst of all, not just Twitter, but Donald Trump Jr. I saw this and I actually responded to it earlier today while we were streaming. I kind of let that shit slide in there. Totally normal to greet your wife with a firm handshake and bro hug / backslap. Tim Walz isn't weird at all, guys. So that was something that Donald Trump Jr. thought was a good line of attack, to which I responded in the way possible. I said, I wouldn't be posting shit like this knowing full well that the governor of California made your current wife feel things you'll never be able to make her feel. Okay. Obviously, that was maybe a little too big. Okay. I know. But also, a lot of this is about how people read people on camera. Okay. You cannot, no matter how hard you try, make a narrative like that stick with a guy like Tim Walz, because he doesn't read like that. He reads like a regular ass Midwestern dad. He reads too normal in comparison to the rest of the DC bureaucrats. Okay. And I'm not just saying that because I personally like him or like his background. I'm just also looking at the polls. He was a relatively lesser known governor who was very popular in his state. He was pretty popular in his state. But beyond that, in every state that he has appeared so far, he's leading in the approval ratings by multiple digits at this point, in comparison to even Kamala Harris. He's got a +11 boost on Pennsylvania. Kamala Harris has a +2. So obviously people are responding to it positively as well. My normie friends who despise Joe Biden are genuinely elated with Walz. Okay. And the thing is, you can't look at that and be like, that's weird. That's the weird thing, actually. This guy who hugged his wife after delivering his speech, shook her hand and then hugged her after his speech. That's the real weird thing, not us. When Trump is the presidential candidate for your party, Trump is notoriously odd when it comes to his relationship with his trophy wife. It just doesn't make any sense. So you can't do that. It doesn't work. It will always fall. It will always fall on deaf ears. Okay. That's number one. Number two, I think this is similar to when someone like Sneeko will try to be like, Hasan, you're so soy, right? You're so soy. You're so gay. You're such a beta male, shit like that. Where it's like, bro, look at yourself and then look at me. Do you think the average person who isn't primed into believing weird right-wing narratives is going to look at a person like me that is completely uninitiated, is going to look at a person like me and look at a person like you and be like, between these two, Hasan is the soy one, he's the beta one, he's the soy cuck beta, that's crazy. You can't, at the end of the day, we have primal lizard brains, okay? And we respond to shapes and colors on screen. So if something is so obviously in the opposite direction, you can't pull normal people in the margins into believing that. Okay. That's why the greatest. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing. Your mother is buried in an unmarked grave on a golf course. Yeah. That is why. What? You don't blame the entire world economy on a single woman while she's still vice president? Be real feminist baby boy. Huh? You okay? I'm confused. Yeah, dude. They're coping about numbers like this. Michigan net favorables, Walz +14, Harris +2, Vance -6, Trump -10. Dude, I'm saying it, but without those glasses, you look like a big body nerd. I feel like with glasses, I look more nerdy. What do you mean? Anyway, point is, Vance -11. I told you, anyone that is close enough to Ohio, which also despises Vance, is going to hate Vance. Walz +11. Harris +2. I told you. You can't try to, you can only try to lean into what people are thinking and maybe exacerbate that attitude. You can't just genuinely rework the way people respond to certain things that they feel, certain things that they watch, certain things that they see. This is a legitimate problem within the within the Republican Party, where they personally think that like Hollywood liberal media is the reason why people have these attitudes, right? That they think like people are, I don't know, pro-gay because of liberal media. And the response to that is making like right-wing media that will then brainwash people into having right-wing opinions and like being anti-gay and all this shit. And they don't realize that like, no, man, Hollywood does that shit because there's like a lot of gay people in Hollywood and they don't have that kind of attitude. It's like an organic thing that they feel. And most people over the course of many, many years, especially when like legislation changes as well, their attitudes reflect that reality that they experience on the ground. Like marketing doesn't work in that direction. You can get people to move a little bit in your direction if they're already primed to feel a certain way, but you can't like seriously rework the attitudes that people have. Okay. Kai Siant live. Who wants a gifted at everyone? Oh my God. Kai Siant is in the chat. The real Kai. The culture that you experience is broadly reflective of the material conditions, the underlying material conditions. Okay. It's like a mirror held up to the real experience that people have. You can only move in the margins if there is already like a genuine lack of interest in a particular issue, like Israel, for example, for many, many years, genuine lack of knowledge, or if people already have these kinds of hostilities and resentments that you can maybe beef up those opinions. Like, for example, white supremacy. White supremacy is a foundational principle for America, right? It is an attitude that is broadly reflected in society. It is an attitude that is maintained through our institutions, right? It's all around us at any given moment. That's precisely the reason why Birth of a Nation was so goddamn successful in revitalizing the Klan, right? It would not work. You could not be able to like teach people to not be racist just through culture alone. Institutions need to work in that direction.